Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Discriminating Gamer, the board game review show that currently has a cold. So if you see any snot coming out, you know, it's a cold. Ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to take a look at Athens and Sparta from Columbia Games. Athens and Sparta from Columbia Games is a two-player block war game which depicts the Peloponnesian War of the 5th century BC, in which, of course, the city-state of Athens, a sea power, a naval power, went up against the military might of the land power that was Sparta. Now, again, this is a block war game. You've got the blocks that are rotated that, of course, have the different, they kind of denote their strength and how many dice they're going to roll, depending on where they are rotated to. The game is divided up into a series of Olympiads, and each Olympiad has about 6 game turns in it. Essentially, you have cards that you're going to lay out. You're going to play cards over the course of these Olympiads that are going to give you kind of your impetus to move and to attack. Now, the cards you have are going to have numbers on them. They're also going to have events on them. So you play the cards. Whoever has the highest number kind of has initiative. They're going to move first, but also, too, if you have events, they're going to kind of take precedence there as well. But you go ahead, you play your cards, and it's going to say essentially how many units you can move that turn, or again, as I say, if there's an event, what the event is. Now, your major units in this game are, of course, the Hoplite, the Peltist, the Cavalry, and the Ship. And they all have kind of movement points that they can move every turn. You also have a strategic move, which allows you to move a lot further with your units, but you have to end your movement in a friendly port or a friendly land space. Now, terrain, of course, is a factor. You've got mountains, you've got some, seas and stuff that you all kind of have to take into account as you are moving. You can also have only so many units attack through a certain number of hex sides at a time. Now, when you move into a hex with other enemy units, a battle, of course, begins. How battle works is you line up all of your blocks, you reveal them. Now, throughout the whole game, your blocks are only facing you, so there's a fog of war element here. But when you get into a battle, of course, you lay all the blocks down. You can see what you've got. You can see what the other guy has as well. Now, your blocks all have kind of letters on them with a number. So, A1, B2, whatever. And you're kind of following that. Your A's go first, then your B's, then your C's. And it's like the one side rolls their A's, then the other side rolls their A's. The one side rolls their B's, the other side rolls their B's. So it goes back and forth like that. So which means if you're attacking, you're not going to roll first. It's going to depend on what units you've got. Now, combat is not instantaneous. As soon as one side takes a hit, you're going to rotate your block. Now, that's important because where your block is going to determine how many dice you're going to roll. So that can, of course, the combat is very fluid in that you're attacking, but you're also taking hits, and it's mitigating what the effects of your own attack or your counterattack are going to do over the course of the battle. Now, one thing also you can do is if you are at your city that has city walls, you can retreat within your city walls, in which case it becomes a lot harder for the attacker to really hurt you. Very difficult for the attacker to hurt you. At the same time, you can leave some of the blocks outside the walls to do a regular round of combat before you retreat them into the walls. Once you're in the walls, you can kind of go out and sally and try to attack. But essentially, you're inaugurating a siege combat. And the longer both sides are in siege combat, depending on the factors, depending whether it's a full siege or a half siege, whether you're on a port near water or not, you are going to have to roll for attrition at the end of every of your turns. You're going to have to see how many guys you lose, either if you're besieging or under siege in a particular hex. Now, ships, they can attack along the coast just like the land units can. They can also blockade ports and, cause some of that siege attrition to be a little bit more harmful to the defender. But they, too, are important units in the game. Now, another thing you can do on your turn is you can spend some of your points, your movement points, to essentially inaugurate a revolt, either a tyranny revolt to the Athenians and their allies, or a democratic revolt to the Spartans and their allies. And essentially, this just puts a block, like a military block in a city, and you just kind of really quickly do combat. Now, that block's going to go away, but you can really whittle down an enemy. Critically, you're going to get a look at what unit or units they have in a particular space in a particular city when you use it. So it can be an effective tool, and you can use that in combination with a conventional attack, so it can really help you. The Athenians can also launch a Helot Revolt, which causes kind of a Helot uprising among the Spartans. Once that is put down by the Spartans, however, then you can't do that again. That's the Helots' great try for freedom from their oppressors, the Spartans, but it is, as I say, it's kind of a one-shot. Now, essentially, at the end of every Olympiad, you tally up all your build points from all your cities. That's how many build points you can spend to build new units or replacements for your units. You can rotate them back. For every rotation you do for the hoplites and the peltasts, it's one build point. For every cavalry and naval unit you use, it's 2 build points. So you can rotate your guys back, and you can put new ones on the board in their cities to try to recover your strength and prepare for new attacks. So there are a couple of victory conditions. If at any time the Athenian or Spartan player captures their opposing city, the capturer wins the game. If at the end of Olympiad 89, whoever has, I think it's 30 build points, they win the game. If they're tied, then the Athenian player will win the game in that instance. But essentially, that's victory conditions, and whoever can pull that off will win Athens and Sparta. So I have to tell you, first of all, I am endlessly fascinated with the Peloponnesian War. It is absolutely brilliant. I've read some wonderful, wonderful books on the Peloponnesian War, and I just, it's a fascinating conflict. And this game, I had first come into my consciousness about 4 or 5 years ago, and I thought, wow, I'd love to play a game based on the Peloponnesian War. That's something I hadn't played a game about before. So I was really looking forward to this. I actually was in contact with Columbia Games years ago, and they sent me, when I was writing for the Deseret News, they actually said they didn't have any copies of this, but they sent me a copy of Julius Caesar. So I played Julius Caesar, and I fell in love with Julius Caesar. It's got the same combat mechanic as this did, and I just thought it was a brilliant game. Julius Caesar is really, really good. So this is one that's been on my radar for a while, and recently the good folks at Columbia Games were able to get me a copy of this, so I sat down and I played it. And this came out, I want to say originally like in 2007 or 8 or something, so it's been around about 10 years roughly. So I sat down, I played the game, and first of all, let me say, the combat system here, with the blocks, with the back and forth, is really fun. I really like that a lot. That, to me, this is where the game shines, is with the combat mechanic here, which we've seen in Julius Caesar and some of these other games. I love it. I love the fog of war aspects of the game, how you keep your blocks hidden from the opponent for much of it. I think that's fantastic. The card play is good. Some of the events that come up are kind of interesting and kind of add some little, randomness, some sugar, some spice to it. I like that. But my problem with this game is it's kind of ironic, because I was drawn to this game because of my love for the history behind it, and yet the game, I think, suffers from the history behind it. In the attempt to be so historical, it kind of negates a lot of what could have been more fun and interesting with this game. What I'm trying to get at is the Peloponnesian War lasted for 27 years. It was a deadlock between Sparta and Athens in Greece because the Spartans could not take the Greek walls, the long walls that they had built to Piraeus and the walls surrounding the city. And this war went on for 27 years. It was a war of attrition. It was a war of attrition in central Greece. Not much happened in central Greece and in the Peloponnesus, at least, right there in the center. Much like the actual war, this game is a game about the periphery. What's happening, in Syracuse and Sicily and, in Corcyra and kind of up, in Thessaly and all these places, and in the Aegean. And so it's kind of, you're kind of constantly shifting around and around and around in the periphery. And the center, you don't want to take too many risks, because if you lose your capital, that's the ball game. So you don't want to take too many chances. And it's easy to I mean, you start out with Athens. I mean, most cities, I think, only have a stacking limit of like 4. Athens has 6 because it can put 2 ships in there. And so you got all this power, you want to use it, but you're like, I don't dare. Because one bad battle, one bad roll, and your armies can be significantly weakened. Now, I think that's great as a general rule because, as von Clausewitz said, war is the realm of chance. But still, it makes it so you just don't want to risk it, as, indeed, the Athenians did. That's what Pericles wanted to do, was just stay behind the walls. And it wasn't until after he died that, of course, they go on the Sicilian adventure. So I feel like this game has a lot of fun stuff going for it, a lot of strengths, and yet at the end of the day, it just doesn't quite deliver the strategic challenge I had hoped for because of that kind of stalemate strategic view you kind of have to take, or you're inclined to take, I should say. Still, it's got a lot going for it. It's certainly a good introduction to the time period and the history behind it, which I really appreciate. Still, I'd rather say to you, check out Julius Caesar. I think it's a better game. I had a lot more fun with it. Peloponnesian War, Athens versus Sparta. It's a good game, but I mean, it's good for what it is, I guess. But it lacks bite. So I'm going to say try it before you buy it, but check out Julius Caesar instead. Thank you once again for joining us today on The Discriminating Gamer. As always, we ask you to please leave a comment for us on YouTube, on Board Game Geek, on our Facebook page, or on thediscriminatinggamer.com. We ask you to please like us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and follow us on Twitter. We are The Discriminating Gamer, and if you would like to learn more about the Peloponnesian Wars, I recommend the following books. The Peloponnesian War by Donald Kagan. Thucydides by Donald Kagan. A War Like No Other from Victor Davis Hanson. Song of Wrath from J.E. Lendon. These and other books are available in your local library.
Please somebody help me on my feet again. And I don't know where I'm going, and I don't know where I've been. Please somebody help me on the solid ground. It's a long time, and I'll be dying. Once a year I wind up in the band.
Join the Superhero Registration Act. Never. Don't do drugs.